Hello, I didn't see you there. It's good to see another person. It's been a while. Long story short, I've been floating around in the flames of Mordor for the last while now, and it's become quite lonely. I also think the Dark Lord is thinking about turning me into his next piece of jewelry, so please send help. But anyways, a couple days ago, we had pre-release for the new Lord of the Rings Universes Beyond Magic crossover set, and its official paper release is in just a few more days. And while there are plenty of awesome cards to talk about, today I want to highlight my 10 favorite new legendary cards to potentially build new commander decks around. This is not the top 10 most powerful, and this list is purely subjective, just personally my favorite cards that I could see myself maybe building around, so let me know what your favorites are in the comments. Let's get into the list.
I'm also not going to be doing a tier list for this set like I have been a lot of the other recent sets, just because there's about 1,002,000,000 new commanders. But if you want to go see any of my previous tier lists, I'll have a link for that right above here. Alright, to start the list off, we have at number 10, Gandalf, Friend of the Shire. For 3 and a blue, he's an avatar wizard, 2/4 with flash. You may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash, and then whenever the ring tempts you, if you choose a creature other than Gandalf, Friend of the Shire, as your ring bearer, draw a card. Now, I'll get it out of the way right now. I don't really love the ring tempting you mechanic. I think it's kind of a flavor fail. It should be really powerful effects with some sort of downside. There is no downside, but they're also not that powerful. So it kind of seems like a lot of work and a lot of setup for something that's not really worth it. With that said though, the ability to play your sorceries at instant speed is quite powerful. A lot of the time your sorceries are sorceries for balancing reasons. If they were instants, they'd be too strong. So I think Gandalf opens up the possibility for some really interesting game patterns, and yeah, it's going to be some kind of spell slinger deck, but it's going to be pretty cool, pretty strong. And then if you incidentally have the ring tempt you a few times in your deck, that's also going to draw you some more cards, and no one's going to complain about that. At number 9, we have Lord of the Nazgul. For 3 blue black, he's a 4/3 Wraith Noble with flying, and then Wraiths you control have protection from ring bears, which is probably not going to matter that much outside of probably the limited environment for the set, but I digress. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 3/3 Wraith creature token with menace. Then if you control 9 or more Wraiths you control have base power and toughness 9/9 until end of turn. I love these kind of spell slinger decks where you create tokens, because a lot of the time spell slinger decks is like, oh, how are they going to win the game? Well, if you're creating tokens for each of those spells, you're going to be able to close out the game because you're creating a bunch of creatures. I've had decks like this before. I had a Kekar deck, I've had a Talran deck, and they haven't lasted because they just didn't seem strong enough, or they were just kind of annoying. But going in Dimir seems like it opens up some other interesting possibilities, and then a 3/3 with menace is pretty big compared to a lot of the other cards that create creatures when you cast your spells. And if you're playing a bunch of cantrip-like abilities, some very cheap spells that are replacing themselves, I think you're going to be able to get up to 9 very quickly, in which case these 9/9 creatures now with menace are going to be able to close out the game very, very quickly. This is definitely a card I could see myself building around. At number 8, we have Shadowfax, Lord of Horses. For 3 red white, he's a 4/4 horse that says horses you control have haste, because as you know, Shadowfax taught us the meaning of haste. Whenever Shadowfax, Lord of Horses attacks, you may put a creature card with lesser power from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Now, I don't really know if there's enough horses to build a really good red-white horse deck around, but there are some really good horses out there, and I think there's going to continue to be good horses as we move forward in Magic, so even if you can't build a great horse tribal deck right now, you probably will be able to in the near future. I don't see there being a better commander for that deck than Shadowfax. And then obviously that second ability, you're going to be able to cheat in other creatures, especially if they have some kind of evasion. You're going to be able to get in extra damage and cheat out creatures, so then you're going to have other uses for your mana. That seems pretty good, pretty exciting. It seems even more exciting if you have ways to buff Shadowfax's power. You are in the equipment colors. You could find ways to make Shadowfax bigger, which then means you can cheat in bigger creatures. That seems pretty good, pretty exciting. This is one of my favorite flavor wins of the set, and our good friend Tommy, who's in our Commander gameplay series, he's already thinking about building this deck. Number 7, we have Sarmon the White Hand. For 1 blue black red, he's a 2/5 avatar wizard. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, amass Orcs X, where X is that spell's mana value, then goblins and orcs you control have War 2. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is going to be the same way as amass worked in War of the Spark, except that's getting eroded to amass zombies X, and then we'll have this amass Orcs X. So if you don't have the creature, you make one, it gets that many counters on it. If you already have one, you put that many more counters on it. And I like that this card is a little open-ended. You'll see that a couple other times on this list. I like like open-ended commanders, I like sitting down across from my opponent, seeing their commander, and still not really know what they're doing. Because you could build this as Orc and Goblin Tribal. I don't know if that would be the best way to do this, because giving your Orcs and Goblins War 2 probably isn't that good, because those tend to go wide, and then your opponents are just going to want to board wipe as opposed to just knocking out 1 or 2 threats. That's definitely an option for you, but utilizing these amass Orc creature tokens seems very powerful. If you're casting a bunch of small spells, making this a small creature, you're going to have it as sacrifice fodder. That seems pretty interesting. And then if you want to go big, you are in red, so you do have access to fling-like effects, and that seems pretty good too. At number 6, we have King of the Oathbreakers for 2 white black. It's a 3/3 spirit noble with flying. Whenever King of the Oathbreakers or another spirit you control becomes the target of a spell, it phases out. Whenever King of the Oathbreaker or another spirit you control phases in, create a tapped 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. I have a spirit tribal deck that I've played on the show before, and I think King of the Oathbreakers is just better. Yes, it sucks that he doesn't have blue, and a lot of the good spirit and spirit payoffs are in blue, but I feel like this is going to be much better because you're going to be able to protect your board. I think you can look at the feather deck for influence. Just play a bunch of cheap cards that are going to target your stuff, and that's going to protect them. They're not going to be able to be easily removed or board wiped from your opponents because they're going to phase out, and then when they phase back in, you're going to be able to make your board state bigger and find a way to close out the game. This seems like a really tricky but quite powerful commander. It seems quite fun. All right, at number 5, we actually have a partner pair. This is from one of the new commander precons. It's the Sam and Frodo partner pair. First of all, we have Sam, Loyal Attendant for 1 green white. It's a 2/4 halfling peasant that partners with Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a food token. Activate abilities of foods you control cost 1 less to activate. And then we have Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit, which is for 1 and a black, a 1/3 halfling scout that partners with Sam, Loyal Attendant with Vigilance. Whenever Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit attacks, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, the ring tempts you. Then if Frodo is your ring bearer and the ring has tempted you 2 or more times this game, draw a card. Now, I think this is probably just a food deck, but you could go all in on the ring tempting you mechanic as well. My main complaint with food tokens is that it's a lot of mana to spend for not much life gain, but Sam making your food tokens easier to sacrifice obviously makes this way better because that will gain you 3 life, which will make the ring tempt you and keep the engine going. My main concern is that Frodo is a 1/3, so you'll probably want to have a lot of cards that give him evasion so he's not going to die in combat, but I think you're going to be able to draw quite a few cards, and I think this is actually probably pretty good. I think this partner pair specifically is going to care more about the 99 than anything else, but it seems pretty exciting. I might end up picking up this precon. At number 4 on the list, we have Aragorn the Uniter. For all the colors except for black, he's a 5/5 human noble. Whenever you cast a white spell, create a 1/1 white human soldier token. Whenever you cast a blue spell, scry 2. Whenever you cast a red spell, it deals 3 damage to target opponent, and whenever you cast a green spell, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. This is another one that I like because of its open-endedness. You could go all in on 1 or 2 of the colors. Like for instance, you could just go primarily white-green, play a bunch of white spells to make a bunch of tokens, and then you play the green spells to give them buffs to help close out the game. You could go all in on the red and deal a bunch of extra damage with the red cantrip-like effects. My favorite idea on what to do with this is multicolor tribal though. Play a bunch of the charms and a bunch of the commands, and they will trigger each of these abilities for whatever colors those spells are, and it just sounds like fun value. I don't necessarily think that a lot of the commanders I'm talking about today are all that powerful, but they seem very fun. Number 3 on the list though is a very powerful one. This is Sheila, Child of Ungoliath. Ungoliant? I don't know. For 4 black-green, it's an 8/8 spider demon with Death Touch and Ward 2. Other spiders you control have Death Touch and Ward 2. Whenever another creature dealt damage this turn by a spider you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a food artifact, and it loses all other card types. Wow, this is powerful. First of all, a 6 mana 8/8 with any kind of upside is incredibly powerful just by efficiency standards. And then this also just blows away any other spider commanders that we've had at our disposal. Normally, I would say that the last ability is going to be kind of hard to pull off because a lot of spiders have low power, high toughness, but the fact that Sheila is giving them all Death Touch makes it a lot easier. And because you're creating that token's going to have to enter the battlefield, which means, yeah, you're not going to be able to have new creatures that you can attack and block with, but you are going to have their enter the battlefield effects, and there's a lot of those floating around in Commander. You also could probably run this in the 99 of a food deck, even though Sheila would be one of the only, if not the only spider in that deck, just because that last ability is so freaking powerful. At number 2, we have Tom Bombadil. For Wooburg, it's a 4/4 God Bard. As long as there are 4 or more lore counters among sagas you control, Tom has hexproof and indestructible. Whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a saga card, put that card onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This ability only triggers once each turn. Wow, this is such a fun card. I personally love sagas. I think they are great flavor. I think they are great fun in games. I think they're some of my favorite card designs, especially in more recent years of Magic. And we had a couple attempts at Saga Commanders, and we have a couple other that kind of work as Saga Commanders that have been kind of grandfathered into the format, but Tom is by far the best new commander we have for that style. And because he's in 5 colors, you're probably pretty easily going to be able to build something pretty dang powerful. I'm very excited to either build this deck someday, or I'm even more excited to play against it. All right, number 1 is a great example of me talking about cards that are not actually that powerful. I just like them a lot. This is Bilbo Birthday Celebrant for white, black, green. It's a 2/3 halfling rogue. Whenever you gain life, you gain that much life +1. And then you can pay 2 white, black, green, tap it, exile him, search your library for any number of creature cards to put onto the battlefield, then shuffle, activate only if you have 111 or more life. Great flavor win because, as we know, he disappears on his 111th birthday to go live with the elves. It's beautiful, it's funny, it's a flavor win, my guys. Now, I don't know how good that actually is, but in the first episode of our Commander gameplay series, Preston did play a life gain deck, and that deck does consistently get to be gaining several hundred life. So if you're playing a lot of those same cards, I think Bilbo could get to the 111 life probably pretty quick, but you wouldn't want to run him out very quickly unless you have a haste enabler and the mana up to then activate him right away, because it's going to feel pretty bad if you try to do this and then your opponents just blow him up. You're also going to want to make sure that if not on the battlefield, somewhere in the deck you have haste enablers, because it would be really sad if you run this out, you don't have haste, you can't close out the game right away, and then your opponent's board wipe and you lose everything. Your chances of winning go down very, very low. But there are green cards that give your creatures haste, and there are some black cards that have haste and stuff like that, so I feel like you're probably good in that department. I feel like if you're able to resolve Bilbo's ability, you're probably going to win the game. And that's going to do it for my top 10 list of the new commanders in the Lord of the Rings set. Like I said, though, there's about 1,003,000,000 other commanders in this set, so if I didn't talk about one of your favorites, let me know who and why in the comments down below. I'd love to know. I'm really scared that I've actually overlooked some of the commanders just because there are so many. I'm scared that there's some really cool ones that I'm not aware of. So please let me know in the comments down below, and make sure you're subscribed because we have lots of other awesome new Magic the Gathering content coming your way soon, and we'll see you later.